Where's the script?
Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to all of you here in the Supreme Court room and all of you in the House of Representatives that are watching today. You may not know it, but this is a very historic celebration robing our third Indiana tax court judge. Before we get started with the celebration, I want to let you know who is here, some of our dignitaries that are here today. We have, from the federal bench, we have Judge James Sweeney. If you'll just raise your hand when I say your name. Judge Sweeney. We have Magistrate Tim Baker. We have Magistrate Mario Garcia. And now I'd like to introduce Justice Mark Massa, who will introduce his court.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon. Chief Justice Rush and Justice Moulter were unable to attend today, so it's my privilege as our court's senior justice to fill her seat and introduce my colleagues who are in attendance, Justice Jeffrey Slaughter and Justice Christopher Goff, as well as former Chief Justices Randall Shepard and Brent Dixon. A welcome to my colleagues and a welcome to you all. This is a real privilege for me to be able to participate in the investiture of our new tax court judge. As Judge Wentworth said, only the third to serve on this innovative, specialized court that came into existence during the administration of Governor Bob Orr in 1986. I was a young aide to Governor Orr that summer, about to begin night law school in the fall. He was a member of the greatest generation, decorated for his service in the Pacific Theater in World War II, a Yale and Harvard Business School man with a laser focus on the economic well-being of our state, who recognized the vital role the judicial branch plays in our economic and commercial lives. We have since then seen more specialization in our court system, from veterans and problem-solving courts to commercial courts in multiple counties. But the Indiana Tax Court may well have been the first in modern times, and we can be proud of its service it has provided through its first judge, Tom Fisher, and his successor, Marty Wentworth. Judge McAdam is a most worthy heir, and we are proud to welcome him today. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Massa. Now I'd like to introduce Chief Judge Altice, who will introduce his court and say some remarks.
Hi, I'm Chief Judge Bob Altice with the Indiana Court of Appeals. It's my pleasure to be here today, and also my pleasure to introduce my colleagues that are here today. We have a good crowd of them. I'll start with our newest Court of Appeals judge, Paul Felix. Down on the front row, we have Judge Patricia Riley, Judge Melissa May, Judge Paul Mathias, Judge Terry Crone, Judge Cale Bradford, you were early, Judge Bradford, Judge Rudolph Pyle, Judge Elizabeth Tavitas, Judge Leanna Weissman, the Honorable Peter Foley, and the Honorable Dana Kenworthy. We also have senior judges with us here today. We have Ted Najam, who is a senior judge for us, and I know Justice Massa already introduced former Chief Justice Randall Shepard, but we consider him ours these days as he's a senior judge for us. So once again, welcome. So it's my opportunity to give some remarks now, and I must tell you that I had never met Justin McAdams, but in May of last year, he realized that I'd been on the tax court task force and the tax court advisory committee, so he wanted to come by and pick my brain and see whether or not he could ask me any questions and stump me, which he did many times. But it was the first time that I met him, and I learned at that time that he's got a resume that is a killer resume. So he had been with the Office of Management and Budget since 2015. He was a math major in college. He then went on to Harvard Law School, and he clerked for Justice Brent Dixon, and he was a governor's fellow in 2005 for Mitch Daniels. So I looked at him, I'm like, this guy's got the whole package going on. And after talking to him, I realized it wasn't just his resume, that he was a wonderful person, very engaged, and I was convinced at that time that he was, at a minimum, going to make the final 3, which he did. And then I was not surprised at all when Governor Holcomb selected him as our new tax court judge. Since that time, Justin has tagged along with us on numerous lunch occasions, and all of us on the Court of Appeals have gotten to know him a little bit better. He's attending our brown bag, and I think we're all convinced that he's the real deal, and we all agree he's smart, he's well-rounded, he's a good guy, and he's very well suited for his new role as Indiana's newest tax court judge. So congratulations on behalf of the Court of Appeals. You'll do well, and good luck.
Thank you, Chief Judge Altice. Now it's my opportunity to introduce the staff of the Supreme Court who is here: Justin Faulkner, Chief Administrative Officer, and Greg Packmeyer, who is the Clerk of the Courts. Also, the Court of Appeals Court Administrator is Larry Morris, who is also here. My court, my former court, I don't know if I'm still there or not as a senior judge, but my court, the Indiana Tax Court staff is here, and they have done a great job to put this together today, with lots of other help as well. Karen Graves is the court administrator of the tax court. Karen. Erica Aker is the staff attorney. Brandy Chanin is the senior clerk, and Stephen Madden is a clerk for the court. And now I'm going to introduce other dignitaries. State elected officials are here today. Daniel Elliott, our state treasurer. Tara Klutz, state comptroller. She changed the name to that. I like it. Diego Morales, Secretary of State. The legislative branch has Senator Travis Holdman here. He is not here, I guess. Senator Rodney. Oh, is he?
Yes, to the left.
Good, okay. Senator Travis Holdman, where are you? Welcome, sir. Sorry. You're the chair of the Tax and Fiscal Policy Committee, right? Okay. Senator Rodney Pohl, Jr., Representative Jeff Thompson, who's the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. For the executive branch, from the governor's office, we have Earl Good, who is the chief of staff there, Earl. Joe Hernans, general counsel to the governor. Sharon Jackson, assistant general counsel. And Michael Nassett, deputy general counsel. Zach Jackson is here. He's the director of the State Budget Agency. Chris Johnson is here, and he is a director of the OMB, Office of Management and Budget. Indiana Board of Tax Review has all 3 commissioners here. The chair, Jonathan Elrod, Betsy Brand, and Timothy Schultz. From the Department of Revenue, we have the Commissioner, Robert Grenes. And from the Department of Local Government Finance, the Commissioner I've just made a faux pas. Dan Shackle. Other dignitaries are in the audience. David Bottorff, Executive Director of the Association of Indiana Counties. Kevin Brinegar, he is the president, not for very much longer, but he is the president of the Indiana Chamber of Commerce. Andrew Berger, who is the senior vice president of the Indiana Manufacturers Association. We have the Honorable Thomas Feltz, who is the newly minted Indiana State Bar Association president. We have Dean Max Hoffman from IU McKinney Law School. We have from the Judicial Nominating Commission, Holly Wojak, and and Jan Aikman Dixon is here. She's the founder of the Judicial Family Institute. And last, but certainly not least in this crowd, I want to introduce our first tax court judge, Thomas Graham Fisher. And it's not easy being first. Not easy at all to be first. But it's so memorable, and you have the opportunity, if you take it, to leave an imprint forever on what you do. And certainly Judge Fisher has done that. He has made our court one that is nationally respected, and we are one of only 6 states that have judicial tax courts, and only 3 of those have single judge tax courts. And we have made our mark, and it was all because of the nearly 25 years that Judge Fisher sat as this tax court's judge. And as you see, and as you've already seen from the remarks, but you will continue to see, that Judge McAdam will continue the growth, development, and bring new heights to the tax court. To move on and have a very nice next step, I'd like to invite Judge McAdam's children to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
One more, he's got a basketball team.
That's a tough act to follow. On the other hand, it will be followed. I'd like to invite Joe Herons to come up and say a few words.
Judge Wentworth, Justice Massa, Chief Judge Altice, justices, judges, and honored guests, good afternoon. Governor Holcomb very much wanted to be here today to offer his thoughts about Judge McAdam, but unfortunately the governor wasn't able to be here today, and he asked me to attend in his place and say a few words. Before sharing remarks about Judge McAdam, the governor wanted me to convey his deep appreciation to the Chief Justice and to the entire Judicial Nominating Commission for its robust and thorough vetting of all the candidates, and for sending him 3 very capable and well-qualified finalists. As he said to me the other day, wonderful events like today's ceremony are to be appreciated and celebrated, and that simply would not happen without your commitment to this remarkably important process and all the time, effort, and energy each of you puts into it. So thank you. At previous robing ceremonies that I've had the privilege to speak at, I've said that days like this are momentous days. Momentous for the judge being robed, for their family, friends, our judiciary as a whole, and indeed our entire state. And one of those reasons that I like to use the word momentous is because of the impact that a single judge, an extremely well-qualified judge, well-suited to serve, can have for our state. The governor likes to say that if he chooses well, makes a great selection, magic happens, because he knows, he understands the absolutely critical role of judges and our judiciary in our state, That role is pivotal and cannot be overstated. Back in 1778, Alexander Hamilton in Federalist Paper 78 gave a powerful and persuasive defense of not only the judicial branch of government, but also the extraordinary importance of judicial review, as it reinforces the rule of law that underpins and does so much to help perpetuate this great 235-year experiment in democracy and self-governance that we call America. Many experts recognize Alexander Hamilton's remarks as the most famous defense of judicial review in American history, and Federalist Paper 78 contributed ultimately to the precedent set in the seminal and foundational case of Marbury versus Madison 15 years later in 1803. There's no question, no doubt, that our state benefits enormously from judges and the role they play in our society, which, as I mentioned, is pivotal. And not to diss in any way Alexander Hamilton, but the governor believes that judges today must obviously engage in judicial review. That is their primary responsibility, but the job has grown into so much more. He believes judges need to be active not only inside, but also outside of the courtroom, in their communities and around the state, making a difference, and not just necessarily in the legal field. Judges in our judiciary are in a position to have an enormous influence and impact in so many ways, and our society and our state, more than ever, needs that. I mention these things because our state has benefited immensely from good, strong, forward-thinking leadership in our judiciary that generates and implements new ideas and innovations that are helping make Indiana and communities across our state a better place for all. And it all starts with finding highly qualified, remarkably talented people to serve. Consistent with that, what the governor looks for when he's deciding who to appoint to the bench are candidates who are bright, dedicated, ethical, innovative, collaborative, and who will be fair, just, and serve with honor and distinction. That's a long list, but an important one, because the governor knows when the person he appoints has these qualities and characteristics, wonderful things, magic, will happen. Which brings me to Justin McAdam and his selection. All of the qualities and characteristics that I just mentioned, he has, every single one. The governor knows this, as do my team and I, as well as many others inside and outside of state government, because we've observed and at times marveled at Justin, not only for what he's capable of, but also what he contributes, how he can take a complex, challenging situation, quickly analyze and understand it, and then navigate successfully through it in a productive and beneficial way. That's true talent, and Judge McAdam has it. In terms of his background, he attended Purdue, as was mentioned, to study mathematics, and then he went to IU where he studied economics, graduating at the top of his class. From there, he went on to Harvard Law School, where he was among the top students. He has one of our state's sharpest legal minds. Along his journey, Justin has been a governor's fellow for Mitch Daniels in 2005, a budget analyst at the State Budget Agency, a law clerk for the Massachusetts State Ethics Commission, a summer associate in one of our nation's premier law firms headquartered in Washington, D.C., and a law clerk for former Indiana Supreme Court Chief Justice Brent Dixon in 2011. During his time at OMB, Justin held many positions which have involved extensive tax responsibilities, including tax administration, compliance, tax policy, legislation, and tax litigation. He also handled tax matters when he was in private practice. As the governor noted in his public comments when announcing Justin's selection back in July, it takes a special kind of passion and professional experience to devote your time and talents to tax law and the tax court. But Justin's desire, character, experience, and qualifications make him a perfect fit. During his time in state government, Justin has chaired the Indiana Board for Depositories, as well as the Distressed Unit Appeal Board, where he presided over many proceedings, always leading in an appropriate and thoughtful manner. And he also has extensive experience serving as a trustee for the Indiana Next Level Fund Investment Board and also the Indiana Public Retirement System. And as the governor noted, Justin is laser focused on the people he serves, and it shows. We've seen it firsthand, and we've heard it from his colleagues and many others who've been impressed by what they describe as his intelligence, calm demeanor, and level-headed approach. They also say he possesses, and I quote, a rare combination of intellectual ability, legal knowledge, common sense, humility, and a deep conviction of his responsibility to do what is right and fair. That's high praise, and the governor couldn't agree more. In addition to his service to our state, Justin has been active in the Indiana State Bar Association, where he has served in various roles, including on committees focused on tax, legislation, legal education, and modernizing the judicial system. Justin has also contributed to his Hendricks County community through service on the board of the Avon Education Foundation that supports local schools, and he has served in other ways there too. And I'll conclude by sharing the governor's own words at the conclusion of his public remarks about Justin back in July. Governor Holcomb said, "Justin, your qualifications are impressive, your reputation is strong, and your accomplishments are many. For your commitment and contributions that have made to Indiana law and justice, for your deep personal and professional integrity, for the remarkable qualities and attributes you will bring to bear, and for so many more reasons. I'm confident that you will continue to make your family and our state proud as you serve as the next tax court judge for our state." Judge McAdam, on behalf of the governor, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to introduce and have him step forward to give some remarks. Former Chief Justice Dixon. He was the 100th Justice of our Supreme Court, and I believe he took the bench in 1986 and was Chief Justice for about 2 years between 2012 and 2014. Justice Dixon.
Thank you, Judge Wentworth. It looks like we have a plethora of adjectives to describe this man today. Amazing comments that we heard from Judge Altice as well as Joe Heerens. And some of these remarks I'm going to repeat because I had already written them down, and bear with me on that. Being able to introduce and tell you a little about Justin McAdam today is really a privilege and a joy. Governor Holcomb has made a superb selection in naming Justin as Indiana's new tax court judge. And there's no doubt that he will earn enthusiastic, widespread approval from taxpayers, government agencies, tax practitioners, businesses, and from Hoosiers in all walks of life. So here is a very brief summary of some of the highlights of his life so far to help you appreciate this remarkable young man and realize what a fine judge the Indiana Tax Court he will be for years to come. Already well equipped, he is ready to hit the ground running. When Justin was 9 years old, he came to Terre Haute with his family and grew up there, graduating from North Vigo or Vigo, I'm not sure which one is right. But from there he was off to Purdue, which is pronounced Purdue, where he excelled in mathematics. Finding he had a growing interest in economics and political science, he transferred to Indiana University in Bloomington, earned his degree with highest distinction, selected to Phi Beta Kappa, the prestigious academic honor society. And after college, Justin was awarded a governor's fellowship by Governor Mitch Daniels. During most of his fellowship year, Justin worked on education policy with a brief stint in the General Counsel's office of the Lieutenant Governor, followed by work on education finance policy as a member of the Indiana State Budget Agency. The next step in Justin's career, or in his education actually, was Harvard Law School, where he obtained his Juris Doctorate degree in 2011. During his summers, as you've heard, he worked for a major Washington, D.C. law firm, for the Massachusetts State Ethics Commission, and for the Pioneer Institute. After graduation from Harvard and passing the Indiana bar, Justin became one of my law clerks on the Indiana Supreme Court. And an impressive law clerk he was. Bright, energetic, resourceful, knowledgeable, practical, conscientious, articulate, sociable. These are but a few of the adjectives that describe this young law clerk who worked for me then. Justin then returned to Terre Haute after his clerkship, and he worked for 3 years as an associate attorney for the Bopp Law Firm. His work there primarily involved trial and appellate litigation and advising clients about a variety of state and federal legal issues. Then in 2015, Justin was able to pursue his joint fascination with economics and law. He joined the Indiana Office of Management and Budget, which you will hear referred to as the OMB. And he continued to serve in that capacity until his appointment as tax court judge. During those 8 years, Justin has functioned in various capacities, including that of general counsel, also general counsel for the State Budget Agency. And this has meant a high-level oversight and handling of legal issues for various agencies accountable to the Office of Management and Budget, including the State Budget Agency, the Department of Revenue, the Department of Local Government Finance, the Indiana Bureau of Tax Review, and several others. Particularly significant has been his responsibility for oversight of executive branch tax policy, where he has focused on building a tax system that is predictable, founded on clear rules, announced in advance, and consistent with basic notions of due process and fairness. In one major case, and lasted over 2 years, 2019 and 2020, he led a negotiation that resulted in an agreed settlement between the state and a corporate taxpayers that reduced the taxpayers' potential tax liability by several $1 million. In 2017 and 18, Justin was at the forefront of the administration's response to the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which required all sorts of working with the Indiana General Assembly to craft appropriate legislation. And throughout his service with the Office of Management and Budget, Justin has been deeply involved in the review and revision of administrative rules promulgated by the executive branch. Another of his major roles involved the leadership of the Distressed Unit Appeals Board and its responsibilities for the Gary Community School Corporation. He served as chair also of the Indiana Board of Depositories, as a trustee of the Indiana Public Retirement System, and as a trustee of the Indiana Next Level Trust Fund. This only touches on the surface of Justin's extensive and complicated work in the executive branch. In short, he is no stranger to Indiana government law and tax policy. There is much more to Justin McAdam than his broad economic, legal expertise and experience. His personal life is characterized by a deep commitment with his family, his church, and his community. Justin and his wife, Amy, were married in 2005, just before he started law school at Harvard. Amy is also from Terre Haute. The McAdam family moved from Terre Haute to Hendricks County in 2016. Since then, Justin has been very involved in the Avon Educational Foundation, where, among other things, he has served on the board of directors for 3 years. He's also served in various leadership, financial, and organizational capacities for his church in Avon. Among the issues he tackled there has been recruiting and hiring several new pastors, negotiating a land sale, reducing the budget deficit, developing a plan for operations during and after COVID-19 pandemic. You may not know, but Justin loves to play chess. And he has founded and led various programs in central Indiana to introduce and teach chess to young people. So as you can see, our new tax court judge is talented and caring, a multi-dimensional person. He comes to the task enormously equipped with knowledge and hands-on experience. Justin McAdam brings to his new position the potential of a long future of appellate judicial service. He possesses the intellect, the wisdom, the integrity, the organizational ability, the zest for efficiency, the foresight, the compassion, and the sense of fairness to well serve the Indiana tax court and the entire state of Indiana for years to come. Justin McAdam, welcome to the Indiana judiciary.
Thank you, Chief Justice Dixon. That was wonderful. Next, I would like to introduce you to and have him come forward, give some remarks, Reverend Chet Martin, who is a friend and former pastor of Light and Life Free Methodist Church, which is Justin McAdam's church. Reverend Martin.
I, too, am a fan. And if I had known all of this, Justin, I might have treated you better these last several years. I don't know. Outside the legal community, most of us form our opinions about judges based on the real ones we read about and the fictional ones that we see on television. And those judges we read about and see are put through this non-legal filter. We, the public, believe that judges should be wise, learned, knowledgeable, impartial, and above all, trustworthy. We're willing to be fair about it. No one equals King Solomon. No one can learn or know everything, and no one can be free from all subjectivity. But the last one, we do believe that all who are granted the title of judge should deserve our trust. They should be trustworthy. And so I was very glad to send my letter of recommendation for Justin to the Judicial Nominating Commission, because simply put, I trust him. I met Justin several years ago as part of my duties as lead pastor of the Free Methodist Church in Avon. Their daughters attended our preschool. Amy had had a connection with our former pastor, and so they came to visit our church. And I knew immediately that I wanted them to stay and become a part of our community. They took a little bit of time to make that decision, and I applaud that. But when they began to participate in the life of the church on a regular basis, I saw in Justin someone who would strengthen the church by his leadership. In time, he joined our lay leadership board and ended up being there for some of the biggest and thorniest decisions we made during my years. I saw several characteristics that will add in the making of an excellent judge. I saw compassion. I saw a deep commitment to ethics. I saw Justin listen. I heard Justin speak in agreement with the majority of our church board, and I heard him speak in opposition to a majority of the same board. But I never heard him speak in anger. I never heard him speak with disrespect. And I saw him maintain good relationships with those with whom he disagreed. And the more I watched him, the more I listened to him, the more I trusted him. One of my favorite mental pictures of Justin, he is at a daddy-daughter dance at our church. And he is balancing Helen on one foot and Evelyn on the other, leading them in the dance. Now, I do not pretend to know the issues that will come before Justin on this court to which he has been appointed, but the book I follow teaches that when one is faithful in a little, he can be trusted with more. Justin will surely balance compassion and the law, just as he balanced his twins on their special dance. And I know that is comparing something very simple and seemingly insignificant to something complicated and often very significant. But I make that comparison intentionally because, as I said, when one is faithful and trustworthy in the small matters of life, then he may be trusted in great matters. The ceremony today has a corollary in my own vocation. We have ordination services, and they are important. When we are ordained, we believe that the church has set its seal of approval as close to a guarantee as can be made, an imprimatur of that individual's fitness as a spiritual teacher and guide. And today, the court, this state, sets its seal of approval for Justin's fitness and readiness to be Judge Justin McAdam. For what my non-legal and personal opinion is worth, the state has chosen well. My congratulations and pride, Justin. May God bless you at every turn.
Thank you, Reverend Martin. Well, it's time for the deed to be done. So, would Justice Dixon, Judge McAdam, and his wife Amy, and your children, please come forward to the podium.
We are about to administer the oath of office. Would you raise your right hand, Justin McAdam? Repeat after me, please. I, Justin Lee McAdam,
I, Justin Lee McAdam,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
the duties of the office of Judge of the Indiana Tax Court
the duties of the office of the Judge of the Indiana Tax Court
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Congratulations.
Would Judge McAdam's parents, Donna and Eric McAdam, please come forward and robe their son? Judge McAdam, would you please join us on the bench?
I'm going to speak from here first.
Oh, okay, great.
It is such a joy to be here with all of you today. It is not often that we get to gather together with so many friends and family and colleagues in one place. And I'm so grateful to have each one of you here to mark this occasion with me. Thank you, Judge Wentworth, Justice Massa, and Chief Judge Altice for presiding over this ceremony. It is an honor to have you here. And thank you, Justice Dixon and Pastor Chet. It is a special honor to be introduced by two people who I have the privilege of calling friend and mentor. Thank you. As I look out here over the group today, I see a room filled with people who have helped me get to this moment. I see people who have supported me, who have encouraged me, and who have challenged me. I am so grateful for the investment that each one of you has chosen to make in me. And I thank you for being a part of making me the person that I am today. I especially want to thank Governor Holcomb for giving me this opportunity to serve Hoosiers in such a meaningful way. It is a humbling experience to be entrusted with the responsibility of leading one of Indiana's statewide appellate courts. And I'm grateful for his confidence in me. I also want to thank Chief Justice Rush and the other members of the Judicial Nominating Commission. We have two here today, Tony Patterson and Holly Wojcik. Thank you very much for nominating me. Hoosiers owe these commission members a deep debt of gratitude for the work that they do to dedicating and ensuring that Indiana has the very best judiciary. These members volunteer countless hours of time studying and interviewing candidates to ensure that they have the very best. And I thank you for that work on behalf of all Hoosiers. I also cannot mix the opportunity to recognize the hard work and the diligence of Governor Holcomb's legal team in this judicial selection process. Joe Herons and Sharon Jackson and Michael Nassett, as well as former team member Cindy Carrasco, have always approached the task of selecting Indiana's judges with enthusiasm and the utmost professionalism. Their dedication and thoroughness is unmatched, and I thank them on behalf of every Hoosier for their commitment to Indiana's judiciary. To my new colleagues on the bench, thank you for being so welcoming to me over these first few weeks. So many of you have been quick to reach out and offer assistance and advice. Thank you for your support and encouragement. I look forward to getting to know each of you better in the years to come as we work to move Indiana's judiciary forward. Of course, none of us achieves anything by ourselves. We depend on the support and the sacrifices of those around us to make our way in the world. And I am no exception. My success is a reflection of those who have helped me get to this point. I am especially grateful to all of you who helped me during the judicial nominating process. The conversations, the advice, the letters, the counsel, the support, and the encouragement throughout the endeavor were much appreciated. And your words and your support were heartwarming. It is humbling to have had so many people jump up to support me so quickly when asked without hesitation. Thank you all. Also, I owe a special debt to the OMB team. You've heard much about my time at OMB over the last 8 years. The leaders and individuals who make up Indiana's OMB agencies are dedicated public servants, and they are among the very best our state has to offer. And I thank them for helping me to succeed as I have. And I owe a special thanks to those who have had the pleasure of working for during my legal career. I've had some really great bosses: Chris Johnston, Micah Vincent, Jim Bopp, and Justice Dixon. Each of you trusted me with great responsibility. Each of you challenged me to push myself harder. And each of you gave me the freedom to believe in myself. Thank you for your confidence in me. Thank you for helping me get to this point. And of course, I have been blessed with an amazing family, and I can't help but thank them enough. They have supported and encouraged me every step of the way. At the very beginning are my parents, Eric and Donna McAdam. Like so many of us, they didn't get a playbook when they brought their first baby home from the hospital, but they had a strong compass, and they understood the ingredients of a firm foundation. They set high expectations, and they held me accountable to them. They trained me to be disciplined and to persevere. They modeled a life of service and humility. And most importantly, they showed me how to build my foundation on God and keep my eyes fixed on Him. I'll never forget when I was a freshman in high school, and it was approaching December, and I was ready to quit the wrestling team because I was just tired of going to practice. There were only a few weeks left, and my parents said, "Sure, you can quit, but you'll be grounded till the end of the season." So thank you for making the decision easily. They'll tell you that they don't know how they ended up raising a son like me, but I know how. Through a great example, through unconditional love, and through an unwavering commitment to each other and their children. Thank you. I love you. No less thanks goes to my wife, Amy. We are in our 19th year of marriage and our 24th year of being together, and we are closer than ever. I am who I am because of Amy. She has been through it all with me since we were just teenagers in high school. She has supported me every step of the way, and she's been there to celebrate the touchdowns and the interceptions with me. She makes me better in every way because she challenges me to be a better version of myself through her love, her kindness, and her example. More than anything, she showed me the power of selflessness and humility in life. Amy, thank you for all that you do for me, for our family, and for our children. I love you. And to my children, you are the light of my life. You too have made sacrifices along the journey to get here, and I thank you for that. But being your dad will always be the best job in my life. I love you. Last but not least, thank you to my mother-in-law, Sharon Smith Hart. You have supported and encouraged me since you knew me as just a 17-year-old kid. You even let me marry your daughter. You do so much to support Amy, me, and our family, and your whole family. Thank you for inspiring us all with your spirit of service and your confident contentment. So you've heard a little bit about my background today, and you may be wondering, if you've known me long enough, how did we get here today? You've only heard the ending. You'd be wondering, if you knew me from my high school years and before that, how a kid who grew up dreaming of becoming a paleontologist, digging up dinosaur bones in some far-flung desert, well into his high school years, wound up as the judge of the Indiana Tax Court. And to you I say, that's a great question. What began as a passion for prehistoric lizards, although the real dinosaur fans here would know that it's really prehistoric birds, and my son will back me up on that, gradually morphed into a desire to make an impact on the challenges of the world. The transformation was spurred by personal events in my own life, my own childhood asthma, my grandfather's heart disease, and my grandmother's struggle with Alzheimer's disease while she lived with us at the end of her life. I dreamed of using the then emerging technology and science of genetic biology to cure these awful diseases and others like them. And I even applied to Purdue University to be a genetic biologist. But as you can plainly see today, somewhere along the way, I changed course. My evolution wasn't done. Even as I continued to explore genetic biology over the course of my last couple years of high school, there were many conversations with my mother and a growing interest in current events. And through that, I began to set my sights on public policy. And so it was that in the summer of 2001, standing outside the guidance counselor's door at Purdue University just minutes before I was supposed to register for my freshman classes, this was something you did in person at the time, I surprised my parents and I told them, I don't want to be a genetic biologist anymore. After recovering from the shock of the moment and picking themselves up off the floor, they responded something to the effect of, well, you better pick something quick, because we're about to walk in there. So after huddling for a bit, they went into parent mode, they helped me think through it, and we landed on math. I became a math major for a year, knowing that it would be flexible and would challenge me and allow me to figure out what I wanted to do. But I knew that I didn't want to do what I had set out to do at that time. And eventually, over the next year, over the course of my first year, I recognized what my parents already knew. I love a good debate. And that led me to set my sights on law school and becoming a lawyer. But a lawyer is not a judge, and my interest in becoming a judge came after I had the good fortune to learn at the side of one of Indiana's very best, former Chief Justice Brent Dixon. It would have been impossible for me to leave Justice Dixon's chambers without having a deep appreciation for the judiciary and the craft of judging. He taught me so much about the law, the legal profession, and the impact that the judiciary can have outside the courtroom. I only hope that I can live up to your example and have the kind of impact that you've had over my career. As you can see, my path from clerking to becoming the judge of the Indiana Tax Court has not been traditional, but I think it has prepared me well. I bring a unique perspective to the role, one that I believe will enable me to enhance the tax court and Indiana's judicial system at the same time. It is truly an honor to take the gavel as only the third judge of Indiana's tax court. I'm excited to lead this institution into its next chapter, and I am fortunate to inherit a court with such a strong and well-established foundation from my predecessors, Judge Fisher and Judge Wentworth. Indiana's tax court is unique, and it is a feather in the cap for our great state. It allows Indiana to speak with one voice on tax matters and provides a streamlined approach to providing clarity in a critical and complex area of the law. It sets Indiana apart nationally and is an important reason why Indiana routinely rates among the very best states in the nation for its business and tax climates. My goal, as I take the helm of this court, is to build on that foundation and to set in place that has been set in place by my predecessors and leave the tax court better than I found it. I am committed to improving the court and to elevating it to new heights. And to accomplish this, I've placed my focus on three things. First, on listening to the tax court stakeholders, to the parties, to the practitioners, and others who depend on the court and come before it on a daily basis. It is imperative to understand their experiences, their needs, and their challenges if this institution is to deliver best-in-class service. Second, I'm focused on evaluating the court's processes and procedures in search of new opportunities to provide even better service and expand access to the court. The world is moving faster every day, and this court, like all other courts, must continuously seek to improve itself to maintain Indiana's advantage in this important area. And lastly, I am focused on positioning the court for future success by working to build relationships, establishing partnerships, and educating stakeholders about the court. I'm a collaborator by nature, and I firmly believe that this court can provide even greater value by harnessing the resources and the people available to it. While job one will always remain deciding the cases that come before the court, along the way I hope to strengthen it and position it to serve Hoosiers better. As I finish my remarks here today, I want to thank you all for being here. It is a tremendous show of support, not only for me, but for the institution as well. But as you leave here, I want you to know that the journey is not complete and the destination is not yet reached. I am just setting off down a new path, one that will present new challenges and new opportunities. I'm going to need your support now as much as ever as I work to propel Indiana's tax court forward into its next chapter. Thank you for being here today, and may God bless each of you.
Judge, please join us at the bench. I think our names are all messed up, but you know who we are, right? I'm here to give a few concluding remarks. Any script I would have written has been thrown out the window now, because not only have we heard it once, but we've heard several times the long and wonderful resume Judge McAdam brings to the tax court. I couldn't be prouder to have such an accomplished person at his young age, I might add, being the third tax court judge. I spoke to a few people, and everyone I spoke to that is a friend or a former colleague of Judge McAdam, there's a theme that evolved, and you've heard from some of the folks that I spoke with, and they got to be very specific. But I wanted to know, what is this man like? And everybody that I spoke with seemed to hover around the same themes. And I'll tell you what I learned. I learned that they think he has such an even disposition, even in times of great stress and emotion. He's patient, he's kind, he's a good listener, which he even admits himself. And he's a good counselor when he needs to be so. And all of these qualities are things that he will need to lean on as he takes over the tax court and leads it down into its future path. And I will second what Judge McAdams said, that all courts, and particularly a court with only one judge, needs to go down a path that is innovative, that is effective for the people that it serves. And we need to have someone like that at the helm for the future. And I think in Judge McAdam, Governor Holcomb has found the right person. The takeaway I got from talking to everyone, and I believe strongly that this is what we need in our third tax court judge. They said that Justin McAdams' goal always is to do the right thing. I believe strongly that that should be all of our goals as judges, and I'm so happy to hear that you all, who know him better than I do, have said that that's the way he is. Now, let me also say that I've learned to know, I didn't know you before you were appointed. I had met him, but I did not know him. We didn't cross paths. And I have had a month or two to get to know him. I've met his family. We were together at my retirement. And I've worked with him, and of course now he's my boss. So at any rate, in my experience, all of these things are true. I have a very small window of dealing with Judge McAdam, but he has been a good listener. He is always wanting to do what the right thing is. He's patient, and he makes decisions well. He's good about making decisions, and you need to be good about making a decision when you're a judge. So I am honored to be followed by such an auspicious person with such a wonderful background to bring to this court that I love. And I want to conclude by saying that there is all sorts of wonderful food. I think it's all dessert out there. And so I would like you to please, everyone may leave by both doors will be open. It'll be out in the atrium right there. And please give your personal thanks out there to Judge McAdam, third judge of the Indiana Tax Court. Thank you very much.